So what we'll always do is we will do this question off to the side. And there's space on the side so you can write right underneath it. And what I will be showing you on the question is what you would be expected to show as your work on a test or quiz, how much work you need to show. Whereas the main question that's right beside it is the same kind of question with different numbers, but because it's a textbook, they're explaining everything. And you're not expected to write all of that explanation and all of those words when you do a question. So this way you can see what is it that I need to do on a question like this. So there's the graph of g of x. Look for keywords that are asking you to explain things. We want to sketch the image graph after each translation, write the equation of the image in terms of the function g, and finally state the domain and range. So a translation of 4 units left. Well, what we're going to do with this graph, the graph is already given to you. So in a sense, this is even easier than what you were doing before. Before, you had to know what the x cubed graph looked like first before you could move it 4 to the left. Now they've given you a graph, so all you're going to do is take the key points that are on here, say starting with this one, and you're going to take that point and move it 4 units to the left. And you're going to, don't actually do that with your finger on your notebook because it won't work. But take this point 4 units to the left, this point 4 units to the left, this point 4 units to the left. Once you've got your key points done, you get to connect the dots. Lots of fun. Just connect them in the right order. Otherwise, your graph should look exactly the same as your starting graph. And so this is our final graph. Now, if you've ever been in a math class, you might find that sometimes you feel like, oh, I understood it during math class, but when I got home, I read a question, I didn't know what to do. Now, part of the reasoning for that is we all have a certain amount of attention span. This is probably a true thing. And you're like, you've got maybe, I don't know, in a whole day of school, you've got a good hour and a half of really good attention span, another 45 minutes of mediocre attention span, and the rest of the day, you got to save your energy. So there's times during class where you're like, okay, this is a part of class where I like tune out for a bit because it's not that important, and then something else happens and you tune back in, okay, this is going to be important. You don't realize when a question is written out like this, that's one of those times that you kind of tune out. I was reading you the question, you're like, it's in my notes. I don't have to write anything down. I can wait. He's not showing me anything. I can just like tune out for a second. And while you did that, certain things come up. Like in this question, we have this statement. In terms of the function g. And while I read it to you, my guess is you were like, I don't know what that means. I'll just wait. And so I don't have to think about it right now. And then usually what happens in class is the teacher just does it, and you just pay attention and say, okay, yeah, I get it. But what happens then later is you get to a quiz, or you get to a test, and then you're on your own and you read, in terms of the function g, I have no idea. And that can happen. So what does that mean? Because we're going to get this in terms of a fair bit. And what that means, we want to write an equation for our blue graph, y equals, and on the other side, it needs to have g in it. So if it says write in terms of x, that means your equation on the one side has to have an x in it. If it says write in terms of the function g, that means that the function g has to be on the other side. So I want to write an equation for this blue graph, and I know that that blue graph is the red graph moved 4 to the left. How do I show that in function notation? Would that be inside the function or outside? Inside, so I can leave some space here. There's my function g, and to move it 4 to the left, I'd have plus 4. Yes? So you went g plus 4 like that, and then parentheses like this. and then plus 1 outside. We'll want to, even though the g is by itself here, and they didn't write g of x, we will want to write the g of x inside. So we will write it like this. Okay? And then domain and range. So for our blue graph, domain and range, I'm going to do this one in interval notation. So my smallest value for x is -5. And my largest value for x is 2. Square brackets, because they'll be included on both sides. And my range, my smallest value for y, is a +2, and it goes up to +5. Again, we're going to be graphing more than one thing here, so now I'm going to change colors so that when we're looking at this later, we can see the difference. So for part B, I'll do it in green. And now we're moving things 1 up. So I'll take each of those key points again and move them 1 up. And now in terms of the function g, will that be inside or outside of the function? Outside of the function, so there's my function. And then outside of it, I'll show a +1. Again, domain and range, the smallest value of x is a -1. The largest value of x is 6. Smallest value of y is 3. Largest value of y is 6. Now, after we've done an example, so we just finished example 1, what I will always do right after we're done an example, and you can write this right above your question as well, is I will tell you the questions that you are now able to do from the homework. So if you look, the way that this workbook is set up, it has some examples and questions, and then right after that is a homework assignment with space on the pages for you to be able to do it. The answers to the homework assignments are not at the back of your book, but at the end of the homework assignment. So if you're trying to check your answers as you're going, you don't have to turn all the way to the back. So the homework starts on page 169, and the answers are on page 176. So it's a good design, I think, that you don't have to flip so much back and forth. So that's really good. One of the things I also suggest doing is, now that question 1 is done and we said 4, 5, 6, and 7, turn to the homework and circle 4, 5, 6, and 7. What I often do, and we're going to do that today, so we're going to start working on these. I'll just stop this video.